What is happening, you guys? Welcome back to the Let's Go Win podcast, where we are here to help you be happy, healthy, wealthy, and get better every single day. You guys get ready because we are going to be talking about an amazing experience. It's something that I have experienced, even though I never, ever in 1,000 years thought I would, and that is ayahuasca. And I think there's so many myths out there about this medicine. And I had many of them as well. And the gentleman I'm going to bring on, he's going to help dispel some of those, talk about some of these incredible experiences, and maybe it's something that you get called to as I have. Sam Believ, or as I call Sam Believ, hosts the Ayahuasca podcast and founded LaWayra Ayahuasca Retreat, South America's top-rated retreat. After his transformative ayahuasca experience, he's dedicated to addressing mental health through affordable retreats near Medellin, Colombia. Blending indigenous ceremonies with integration-focused care, his podcast explores ayahuasca's healing potential with expert podcasts from science, psychotherapy, and personal growth. Well, Sam, my brother, it's good to see you again, and just fired up to have you on the show. How you doing?
Great to see you, JM. Good as always, and looking forward to the conversation.
I'm looking forward to it. I was so fortunate to be a guest on your podcast, and I'm excited to have you on this one. I think the big question I have is, how did you discover that this was going to be your path? Because for me, there was so much resistance when it came to this idea of ayahuasca. And I've had my one journey three journeys in 1 week. But I will say, man, that was a big task for me. And I don't know, was that similar for you, or how did you get introduced to this and then knew this is my life's work and purpose?
So from me being introduced to ayahuasca till me making it my life's purpose, about a year has passed. And honestly, before I even say it, I need to make sure people know that I come from a non-religious background, zero spirituality. I was an engineer by trade, very skeptical about everything. However, what brought me to eventually starting an ayahuasca retreat was ayahuasca told me. And it's something that I don't talk about it a lot, even like people when come to the retreat. I don't mention it because I'm still not completely comfortable about it. But basically, it was my 7th ever experience throughout the year, and it was in a jungle. And ayahuasca just showed me like how the universe works. It showed me how to heal people with my hands, which is this weird thing that I'm still kind of learning how to do. And eventually all of this and like few synchronicities later, I ended up with an ayahuasca retreat. So I never started an ayahuasca retreat. I never decided to start an ayahuasca retreat. To sum up the story, was like this, like a chain of synchronicities from me renting rooms in this little estate where I was living in, to then one guy coming over wanting to rent it to do a retreat. At that time, I was drinking a lot of medicine, so for me, it was like, wow, I can drink from home. Then he kind of tried to screw me over a little bit, and he wanted me basically to pay for everything and not pay me anything. But as a result of that, I ended up with an ayahuasca retreat, and the jungle trip. All of that just happened spontaneously. And yeah, ayahuasca just showed me. So ayahuasca never told me to start an ayahuasca retreat. It told me, if you're not going to work with ayahuasca, you'll never be happy. And sounds kind of creepy, but it kind of showed me that, healing side. But because it takes such a long time to learn, I ended up drinking more medicine, and it came to my home, and it just started growing and growing. And now it's arguably the biggest ayahuasca retreat in Colombia and the best rated ayahuasca retreat in South America based on Google reviews. It just kind of happened. So what I like to say is, me and my wife, we did all the work, but decisions kind of came from somewhere else.
Man, that's pretty remarkable, because 30 plus staff members, and to say this wasn't really I wasn't intentional necessarily. This wasn't like what I'm setting out to do. And yet the rapid growth, brother, that's pretty remarkable. Tell me about that growth, man, because 30 staff members is not there's some leadership going on there. There's some, logistics going on. You have quite a bit happening that in a short period of time, you've created something pretty amazing.
Yeah, I came to ayahuasca for healing. I was depressed, but it kind of showed me like you're depressed because you lack purpose. It gave me the purpose, and then I just went through the steps. So we started basically doing one ceremony a month in our backyard with this guy that was kind of learning to be a shaman. We did few of them, and then as I told, it didn't work out for me because I felt being used. Then I brought another shaman, and it started like one ceremony, two ceremonies, 10 people, 15 people, 1 week, 18 people, 11 days. And it just kind of gradually grew. I I would like to take all the credit, but in all honesty, I must admit that I mean, I'm not a businessman. I learned everything I know about business from listening to podcasts. I love podcasts so much. This is why I started one as well. It's just such a great way to learn. But basically, I think I got lucky. I got lucky because it happened to me right after COVID, and all the, I guess, legacy retreats were shut down, and people were looking for something. And because it was never a business for me, we charge very little money. We still do charge less than any other retreat, but obviously not as cheap as it was before because those 30 people you gotta pay them. And yeah, now we ended up with our ceremony team is 10 to 12 people depending on the season, 15 people maintenance, and then we have a marketing team and 7 more people. A lot of them, they're mostly driven by passion and not money, so it's an interesting dynamic when you work in as I guess as opposed to other industries. When you work with this, people come, their life gets changed and they want to contribute, they want to help, so they don't charge me as much as they would maybe other business owner. But yeah, so I did things based on best of my knowledge, but as I'm telling you, and I know it kind of sounds strange, there was definitely guidance. Every step there was like, no, not this way, this way. From choosing the property to finding a shaman to basically everything. Like let's say, I'll give you an example. I want a video from a videographer because I need a video on my website. 2 weeks later, I meet a guy who's a documentary director, and he's like, I'll make a video for you. Let's exchange. I need a website. A few weeks later, I meet a guy who makes a website for me. I need our sales started to go down, and then a friend of mine comes over and volunteers at the retreat for 8 months, and he's like a big marketing guy. And like, just it's strange, but it is nevertheless true. So I do believe it kind of makes me feel that I'm on the right path.
Yeah, and anybody that's experienced this, and we'll get into the experience of what ayahuasca is and what it feels like. I call it a calling. I call it this, whether you call it the universe or God or Mother Nature or Mother Ayahuasca, Mother Aya. I mean, there's lots of different names people attribute to it, but the point is you're being called to. It's showing up in ways when you're asking, then you're actually receiving what you're asking, which I think is pretty cool. My question I have though, brother, because I'm looking at, you're going from being an engineer, uh, you know, to this completely different. I mean, engineering is like, this is how you do it. It's very kind of, stringent. This is the way it goes. To, like ayahuasca or this, the medicine and being very spiritual, it's a little more free flowing. So how has that been for, I guess, the people that knew you growing up, maybe your family? Is this like, wow, Sam's lost his damn mind? Or what? How's that been, brother? I'm just curious.
So yeah, first of all, because my podcast is all about ayahuasca, I interview a lot of people that were firefighters, UFC fighters, psychologists, you name it, and they kind of get this similar situation where they're just yanked out of their normal life and put on this sort of medicine path or healing path, whatever. I guess it's because it's the time has come and we're kind of needed, so we're kind of being recruited by some invisible force. And but for me, I mean, it was a gradual transition. So, and I think being engineer actually helps because, for example, my medicine house, I designed it myself, the cabins and stuff like that. So it really helps in construction and things like that. And I'm still occasionally, because I worked on ships and I worked in offshore oil and gas platforms. So I do run the retreat a little bit like a ship. I think about shifts and schedules and on and off, and sort of ranks and stuff like that. So it does help me, but from a spiritual side of things, it is difficult, especially interacting with shamans that they're not really completely here. They're somewhere else, and it's very difficult when you're being like you're extremely structured, and somebody is extremely unstructured. But I guess that's what creates that balance, that sort of pool, and it ends up being because of my approach and because of my simplicity. And even though now I'm a spiritual person, the way I talk about things and the way I explain it is very like down to earth, so it does not scare people away. Like I don't wear white linen pants and drink from a copper cup. I don't have any crystals. I'm still like normal guys, just that I've seen enough to believe in certain things, and we focus a lot on healing. So I with ayahuasca, as you know yourself, there's healing, there's connection, there's growth, there's this endless spiritual exploration. But I think what is most necessary right now in the world is healing. So that's the way I structure this retreat, and that's I guess my practicality. People like that. People find comfort in the fact that yeah, there's like very spiritual people, and there's me that can explain things, down to earth.
Yeah, I think that's the approach is something that would be welcoming because, again, for myself, coming from a background of at some point, I remember putting this idea as ayahuasca being a drug, right? And that was how I looked at it. And then gradually, as I learned, it's like, no, when they say medicine and plant medicine, there's a reason for that, right? And yet, like you said, the linen pants and the crystals and some of the chantings, I think these are some of the things that people are like, all right, sounds cool, but that's just way too off the beaten path for me, man. Like that's just such a big leap for me. Um, it sounds like you really are. There's no judgment to it, right? You're coming to heal. You're coming to see what the medicine shows you, and that doesn't mean you have to all of a sudden be, this out there type of mentality. You can still be you and heal at the same time. Is that kind of the idea of LaWayra and your setup? Tell me more about if I were to experience it as a client or as somebody that comes to the retreat, what would it feel like?
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly where we stand at. Like, my values basically are accessibility, affordability, and authenticity.
Hmm.
So what I want to do is to lower the barrier to entry for most people that want to work with ayahuasca. Right now, if you mention ayahuasca to an average person, they're like, "Yeah, it's for those hippie people, and it's like $5,000, and I'm not sure, it's a little cringy and stuff like that." But we want like a Joe the Carpenter to be like, "Oh, I'm a little depressed. It's time for me to go drink ayahuasca." What we want to do is like gradually change people's mind that ayahuasca is for everyone. So it's not, ayahuasca is almost for everyone. There are certain times when it's not, but what I truly believe in is the world would be a better place if let's say 90% of people drank it once a year. It would be, that's my dream, actually, to wake up in a world where everyone yesterday had ayahuasca. But so lowering barriers of entry from all those levels will allow that to happen, and that's kind of what my vision is, at least to to a certain extent, because there are limits. You cannot do it for free, but you can do it affordably. And regarding ayahuasca being a drug, I don't judge you at all. When I first heard about it, I was like, what are you talking about, this drug? And you go to the jungle and you puke. It's like, obviously, from my upbringing, if you take any drugs, you end up under the bridge. And it's because we've been programmed this way. I mean, there was like this big propaganda against psychedelics. And I think now it's being sort of slowly changed. But what I tell people when they come to the retreat, one of the first things is, I'm sorry to disappoint you, but there's not going to be any drugs served in the next week. We're only going to be working with medicine. Ayahuasca was a medicine for 5,000 years. Some people say now they found another remnants. It's like 8,000 years, 12,000 years. It's ancient, but it's only been called a drug for like last 50 years, and it's pretty quickly fading away again.
Yeah, and that's I think some of the you mentioned one of the things that I hear. I'll use my wife as an example. The purge, right? Whether it's throwing up or people literally defecating, that people have this big fear, like, oh my gosh, I would never do that. And yet I mean, yes, of course there are people that purge and there are people that will throw up during ceremony. And yet it's not really to me, it wasn't a strange thing. And it actually, as they describe it in ceremony, what this is doing, part of the healing, getting rid of that trauma, it actually makes sense. But how would you dispel some of these things that do hold people back? Because I know that's one. I talked to my wife. I said, like, babe, I went through it. It's not like that. And yet I hear that from people that are almost afraid to go experience it.
Yeah, it's one of the biggest fears. I remember myself as well. I was like, well, I was getting curious, and I was like, I'm not gonna do this ayahuasca thing, but I'm just gonna try and find some DMT. Maybe that will work. I remember my thinking. Now I know that DMT is to ayahuasca is what cheese is to the pizza. Just because it contains it, it doesn't mean it's the complete thing. There's much more things to it. And yeah, purging, first of all, I hate to disappoint people that are listening and they're hoping that they're going to come to an ayahuasca retreat and they're so pure and they've been eating vegan or whatever, nothing is going to come out. Everyone's going to purge. In a week, you have to purge some way. It might be top purge, it might be bottom purge. That also comes from my engineering background when we used to purge boilers and stuff like that. But yeah, you're either going to vomit or you're going to have diarrhea, but purging comes in many forms. And not only you're not going to dislike it, you will enjoy it, and there will be a time when you will be hoping to purge. You will be in a ceremony as like, why haven't I purged yet? Because you know that after the purge comes relief, because in Colombian tradition in Spanish, they don't say to vomit as in vomitar, they say to alleviate as in aliviar, because you alleviate. And not only that, but when you're going to work with other psychedelics after ayahuasca, you will miss the purge, because with mushrooms, for example, a lot of times stuff comes up and then it kind of settles down again. You miss that sort of moment where intangible becomes tangible, spiritual and emotional becomes physical and gets removed from your body. And it's not a side effect. Purging is one of the most important aspects of working with ayahuasca. So don't be afraid of the purge. You will learn how to purge. You'll enjoy how to purge. You will see other people purge, and it's a very bonding experience to purge together.
Yeah, the other thing that I don't know that people understand is there's also preparation. So the dieta, where you're not going in like, hey man, I went out with my buddies, we were in Medellin, and we went out, bar hopping, and then we hopped over to LaWayra and we decided to do ayahuasca. Like, that's not how this is going to work. That's really poor planning if it were to ever go that way. At least my experience was, I want to say at least 2 weeks, maybe it was a week in advance, where it's a pretty it's a clean diet, right? And the dieta was really important, that you went in very intentional of what you're trying to do. You were taking in good, wholesome foods. And so this was all part of the process. It wasn't like you just show up and then all of a sudden you just drink this cup and you purge. Like, there's some preparation. Can you talk a little bit, Sam, of what it looks like with your particular retreat, and maybe dispel any of the things that people may not know about what this journey would feel like?
Yes, so it is a very important part of it. It's sort of part of this accessibility axis that I talk about, because I find that there's a bit of lack of balance in the diet sort of realm. Right now, if you look around and you see different ayahuasca preparation instructions and you put them together, you end up like barely drinking water, if that, so it became so strict and so restrictive. And I think the reason for it is retreat owners, they feel obliged that if they've heard somebody doing something, they need to copy it and keep adding on restrictions. And it's almost like the more strict I am and the more restrictive I am with the diet, the more professional I am. But in reality, it's not really that, because I think it's one of those things that also stops people from coming to the ayahuasca. It's like, what do you mean I need to stop eating red meat for 4 weeks? And so some things are really important. And I've spoken to pharmacologists and physicians and on my podcast specifically asking about science of things and why certain things are not allowed. But I would say a diet, just food related. So we take apart medication and antidepressants, but just food related. 1 week can be enough. 1 week, and most importantly, fermented foods because they contain tyramine, and tyramine together with MAOIs will give you headache, and it can like raise your blood pressure. Not too much salt, some salt, but not too much because salt does tend to block your connection with the medicine. Milk products, can't explain why, but shamans just don't do milk products. Citrus fruits, I think once again because of tyramine. Overly ripe fruits, also because of tyramine. And the rest is basically just sort of common sense, like not too much processed food, not too much greasy food. But regarding red meat, for example, I think it's a bit of a vegan propaganda because like Colombian shamans, for example, when I first went to Drink in the Jungle, they served us red meat, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So it's not about the kind of meat, it's about where the meat comes from. So if it's a grass-fed, sort of happy cow kind of meat, you'll be fine because like indigenous people traditionally used ayahuasca to see the hunting grounds to hunt animals that have red meat. So to say like red meat is not good for ayahuasca, I think it's sort of people try to blend Eastern tradition, Western tradition all together and becomes a super restrictive, overly complicated process. And also in reality, if it's 3 days before the retreat and you ate a cheeseburger and now you're freaking out because you think you're going to have a bad trip, that's not really how it works. Most of the diet stuff only matters till maybe the first purge. And after that, it's out of your system. Here at the retreat, you're going to eat exactly what you need to eat, try it and test it on thousands of people, and then you'll be fine. So it's not going to kill you if you ate some red meat or maybe you ate a slice of cheese. It just might sort of slower your connection with the medicine. What's important is the antidepressants, medication, marijuana, drinking. That's a bit more strict. And yeah, so that's about the diet.
Yeah, if you were to describe it, because I have people often say, well, tell me how it feels. What is it like? And often, Sam, I struggle for words to say, this is to describe exactly the feeling. What I've often said is because I'm colorblind, I saw colors in a way that I've never experienced before in my life. Like if when I shut my eyes and put myself back in Costa Rica is where I did my journeys, the colors were so vibrant and this connection and trees. And I mean, but it's hard for me to describe it to people. I'm curious and if you found a good way to describe what the experience would be like so that people A don't fear it as much and B find like don't have expectations of what it's necessarily going to be other than it's going to literally change your life in a good way. And that's the one thing I've landed on. Everybody I've asked that's done it, they almost say the same thing. Here's what I can tell you. It's going to change your life and in a positive way. So I don't know. How do you
Yeah,
describe it, brother?
I agree with you on the life-changing aspect. That's 100%. I've experienced it myself. It's not going to happen as you expect it. So people think like I'm going to drink it once and all my life has changed. But what it will do, it will just move your direction by 1 or 2 degrees. And a few years later, you're going to end up in a totally different place. But describing an ayahuasca experience is very difficult because I've had more than 100 and I've heard stories of people post ceremony, thousands of stories, and it's never ever the same. Never ever. There are people that never see visions, but they get life changing advice from the medicine in whichever way. There are people that see visions, there are people that feel pain in their body, there are people that feel tension. Every ayahuasca experience is a little different, and it's kind of like it's almost like it's a 100 psychedelics in one, and you can have many different kinds of effects. Like with mushrooms or LSD, if you take a certain amount, you can expect a certain kind of experience. With ayahuasca, it's all very chaotic and very unpredictable, but some patterns are introspection. You might think of some things, remember some things, feel some things, see future, see past, see trauma. It can be very physical, purging, removing tensions from your body, shaking, sweating, you name it. It can be very spiritual, like a very religious experience, or connecting to your version of God, universe, you name it. It can be very emotional, traumas, past traumas, feeling repressed stuff, releasing. That's basically 1% of it. The variety is incredible, and I keep being surprised on how every time I drink medicine, the experience is a little bit different. But it's ineffable. It is extremely difficult to describe with words. So you probably know it yourself. Like you mentioned colors. It's colors. You see colors that don't even exist in real life, whether you're colorblind or not. You see, I've seen combinations of colors that makes no sense. Sometimes you see sounds, or sometimes you hear colors. Like try and explain this. And yeah, so everything and the more, but what's most important, people come to the medicine with expectations, and I always tell them, don't allow your expectation, don't allow your intention to become your expectation, because one thing that I can assure you, it's not going to be what you expect. Everything else is changing, and the medicine will always give you what you need, but it will rarely give you what you want. And the way it's going to give you what you need is always different. And you might have 4 different ceremonies, but in the end of the retreat, you're like, okay, now it all finally makes sense.
Yeah, it is weird, man, because I heard that going in, but I was so clear on my intention. I'm like, nope, this is the only reason I'm here. And to Sam's point, you guys, I'm telling you, like, it was not at all. And I'm really glad what came from it. If we can, just for, I'd like my audience that hasn't experienced this, because I do believe in it. I really think that this is a powerful tool, a powerful medicine. It opens up, as you say, the mindset. It relieves, people from depression. I know people have stopped drinking. People that were alcoholics, they're like they cold turkey, they're done. I mean, it's done some radical things. My first journey, I remember going up and I had my cup, sat on my mat for like 45 minutes and felt nothing. And so then they offered, would you like a second cup? And I went up, and literally before I could get back to my mat, whoa, I'm in this world of, I can't really explain it. And it was it was uncomfortable because I'd never done a psychedelic before. I'm going into something that is really interesting for me. My ears start buzzing, which for me, I have bad hearing. So that was an interesting thing. And it was just like, holy cow, I'm in it, man. And the big thing for me was to just let go and let the medicine kind of take over. What would you say for people that if they're like, okay, man, this sounds pretty cool. What should I do in preparation? Do you set your intentions, or do you just kind of say, I'm going in, I'm going to see what comes of it?
Mm-hmm. So no, the intention is still important, and you definitely need to come to the ceremony with intention. Sometimes even several intentions is fine to have, but once again, intention, but not make it your expectation. Have an intention, but also be flexible to know that medicine may take you somewhere else, and not to overly focus on this one outcome, because it might want to take you somewhere else, and if you're resisting, you're kind of just going to miss the forest for the trees. So intention serves various purposes, and one of them is when you connect, and when you connect very deeply, and now you're like, oh my God, I killed myself, I'm losing my mind, which is not true. You're always coming back. However, it feels that way. This is the moment where you're like, I don't care. I really trust this medicine. This is my intention. I'm here for a reason. I'm going to go through it. And it serves as your guiding light. Because if you're one of those people, it's like, yeah, I have this ayahuasca thing on my bucket list, and I'm just going to go, and it's probably not going to work, and kind of disrespecting the medicine, well, then it's gonna beat you up, and you don't have an intention, you don't have anything to show for when it comes to like getting through that experience. So it's important to have that, and it's important to go with the flow. Whatever medicine takes you, to just allow and let go. And you mentioned, quitting alcohol and things like that. The amount of stories that I have, and I have episodes on my podcast as well, interviewing people that came to ayahuasca just for some random reason, and then they noticed that they just stopped drinking. They didn't even have an intention to stop drinking. And a lot of times I've even had people that don't recall seeing much of a visions or getting any understanding, but then they just come home and their depression goes away. So there's so much kind of things that are difficult to understand about ayahuasca, that and how the healing happens, honestly we don't know, but that it helps a lot of people, that's for sure. Depression, anxiety, suicidal ideation, various health issues, autoimmune stuff. We have one volunteer at the retreat. Since she came here first time, she gained 14 kilos. She weighted like 20 something kilos. She was anorexic, fibromyalgia, you name it. It just, but how it works, I don't know. Nobody understands.
Yeah, and I think that's what I would love to maybe, because you've seen thousands of people come through your center and you've experienced with others. Do you have one or two, transformational experiences that you're like, "Oh my gosh, to see this person in this way and then thrive and really because of the medicine." Do you have any top of mind? I mean, that's amazing. The gal that went from being anorexic, having fibromyalgia, and now she's healthy. That's amazing. Do you have any others that you could share with us?
I mean, so fibromyalgia and anorexia, those are two different stories. It's just I kind of put them all
Oh,
together.
okay. Okay.
I've had so like from a sort of expected ones and normal ones, hundreds of people that depression gone for how long, for however long, 6 months, 1 year, 3 years, since we had some people that were in our very first ceremonies and depression still haven't come back. And sometimes treatment resistant depression. So the one that even antidepressants don't quelch. I have, eating disorders, PTSD, anxiety, all kinds of depression, suicidal people, like 10 plus people that bought one-way ticket because if this doesn't work, I'm ending it. They all went back home. They all went back home optimistic and ready to work on themselves. Autoimmune conditions, gut issues, psoriasis, allergies. Yeah, that's what comes to mind. But that's from like kind of, yeah, it came to your body, did something to your brain kind of point of view. That kind of makes sense. But if you start looking at stuff that somebody did the healing and then their parents feel better, or you have an experience and then your aunt calls you and she's like she felt it, sort of more or less obvious and more sort of paranormal things that they also happen through ayahuasca, because we do focus on healing, we focus on physical and mental healing largely, but you cannot sort of deny that there's a spiritual aspect in it. Whether you believe it or not, it does help you in that realm as well.
You mentioned earlier in the podcast that your dream would be for the world literally to, once a year have this experience, go through and have an ayahuasca, experience. How frequently is this something that do you do? I mean, you have the retreat center. I imagine you're part of facilitating or maybe helping out with that. But how frequently is it something that you check in and do the medicine, or are you still called to it today where it's like, yep, I feel like this is my time and I'm gonna participate?
I have this phrase which completely doesn't rhyme, so don't shame me, but it's ayahuasca once a year keeps the psychiatrist away.
Okay.
Like apple a day. I personally drink one ceremony a month, so not like an entire retreat, but just one ceremony a month. My last ceremony was actually 2 days ago. Sometimes I skip a few months, but then I feel burnout creeping up on me. I feel that for me, that's a sort of sane amount, because I have my spiritual exploration where I'm learning about my spiritual gifts. So I need to stay connected with the medicine, and I also microdose medicine as well sometimes. And for people that, let's say, you have a big trauma or you're addicted to alcohol or heroin or whatever, Then do like a long retreat. Go deep. 11, 18 days, 1 month. Just go deep. And after that, for however long it takes. If you feel like 6 months from now the pain is coming back and the addiction is coming back, then come back. But for most people that are, let's say, they have their normal trauma, but nothing too crazy. I would say once a year, once every 2 years, maybe in between the retreat, definitely do the integration, do the yoga, meditation, journaling, and all the good things. Maybe even have a small mushroom ceremony, one or two, to kind of keep it up. Because obviously, for me, it's easy. I can, tonight there's a ceremony. I can go and join it if I want to. Not that you would ever want to, because it is always a difficult process. But for those who need to fly and go somewhere far to drink the medicine, I would say 1 week a year will definitely get you enough of a push to then have a great year, explore and integrate really well, and then come back. But we have people that come once every 3 months. We have people that come once every 6 months. The beauty of ayahuasca is that you cannot abuse it. If you come, if you come to LaWayra and you come to every hour retreat that we ever create, eventually ayahuasca will grab you and say, like, why are you back so soon? You haven't done the homework. You're like, you disrespect me, and it gives you a bad trip. Happened to me. One time I was too eager and I was drinking too often. It was like, I gave you homework. Why did you do it? And it's like, it's a grandmother spirit or a grandfather spirit, depending on which tradition you're looking at. And it is a tough love kind of spirit. So it's not going to let you abuse it. You will right the wrong. So, but you will know, and there is definitely this feeling and the calling, as you describe yourself, that you're starting to feel the calling slowly once again. But yeah, the calling is also very important, because I think if you've never worked with ayahuasca before, you're probably not going to really understand what it means. So definitely do it first, at least once, and then you will maybe be able to hear the calling. Regarding ayahuasca for everyone, so once again, I don't say ayahuasca is for everyone, but I say ayahuasca is almost for everyone. Unless you're really old and you're borderline dying, or you have schizophrenia, or other mental or physical health issues, ayahuasca will be good for you. And I'm just thinking to myself, and this realization came to me after the ceremony. We have group after group after group of people that come and they judge each other, and then they start getting to know each other and they share. I like to say the best way to make friends as an adult is to come to an ayahuasca retreat. Then they form bonds, and in the end of the week, it's like a family.
Mm.
Strangers become a family. Then you think about it. Well, why can't it be like this day to day? Why do we all feel so alienated from each other? Why do we have more people in the world than ever before, but we're lonelier than we ever been before? How come we can celebrate New Year's, entire planet, at the same day? Why instead of this we don't make like a, what I'm trying to create is like an international ayahuasca day, to like slowly, gradually, as it gets more popular, have a day where everyone drinks ayahuasca. Like, that's the date, and that's, you book your retreat in advance. And I think there will be a moment where we get like every fifth person or every 10th person, and it will be enough to change the way things work. And I mean, I'll be realistic. Ayahuasca is difficult; it's hard to get, and it will take ages, to plant new plants to make sure there's enough for everyone. It can even be other psychedelics. Just have like one day when everyone, respectively, traditionally, with an intention, good set and setting, with a good team, goes deep. And next day, will there be road rage? Will you be like stealing from your neighbor? I don't think so. That's why I'm so excited about it. I don't know if it's going to happen in my lifetime, maybe later, but I think it's either this or we're just going to destroy ourselves.
Hmm. Yeah, I will say he said a lot in that piece. The one thing that I said after I did it, I said I'll never do it again, and here's why. I want people to understand this, because if you've heard me say that, it is a lot of work, you guys. You're not going in and it's like it's fairies and sunshine. Like, no, man, you're doing work. And what I mean by that is you're healing in a way that, man, that's a lot to take in, and it's so worth it. And so it's funny, when I was like, I don't think I'll ever do this again. And then it's been really the last like 3 months. I can't describe the calling. I don't understand, but I have these dreams and these visions. And then somebody's talking to me and it's like, yep, I know it's time. And it just so happened, again, I don't believe in coincidences, that I was on Sam's podcast and he made an amazing offer to come out, and I look forward to it. Sam, anything I didn't know enough to ask you, brother? I could ask you questions all day long, but anything open form that you want to make sure to share with the people as we kind of start to wrap things up?
So I want to reply to things that you just said, and the fact that you're already on this call with me, that's already part of your calling as well. I consider myself somewhat of a messenger, um, self-proposed, self-imposed, whatever you call it. And yeah, the ayahuasca definitely is not a magic bullet. It's not going to magically heal all your problems, but it will open that gate for you for a lot of healing that's to come. And if you really go through that gate and keep going through that sort of corridor and do the work, it will absolutely change your life. And you got to meet it halfway, so to speak. Regarding what I'd want to talk about, I remember when I first came to Colombia, and I was already living here for a few years when I first learned that ayahuasca was available here. So I'm on a few missions, and one mission is that I mentioned, the making ayahuasca accessible and sort of spreading the word, and maybe creating this international day for ayahuasca. We're now also working on a documentary about ayahuasca with a good friend of mine that's Emmy-nominated documentary director. But another mission of mine is I live in Colombia. My wife is Colombian. My kids are Colombian. Colombia is this beautiful country, but I think it's misunderstood and it's branded wrongly. So when I first came to Colombia, I didn't know that there was ayahuasca here. Not only there is ayahuasca in Colombia, but it was actually popularized in Colombia. Famous ethnobotanist Richard Alvin Schultes, he actually was drinking ayahuasca in Colombia or working with it, and this is then kind of going to Western academia. McKenna brothers traveled to Colombia, but then Narcos happened, and Narcos derailed Colombia. So all of the psychedelic tourism went to Peru and even Costa Rica, even though Costa Rica doesn't even have an ayahuasca tradition. It's a completely foreign phenomenon, and most ayahuasca served in Costa Rica comes from either Colombia or Peru. So what I want to do as well is to rebrand Colombia from cocaine to ayahuasca. Cocaine, coca leaves, and ayahuasca vine, they grow in the same region, sometimes next to each other. But coca was this amazing, beautiful plant medicine. We came over as Westerners, synthesized it, destroyed it. We did the same thing with tobacco. We did the same thing with cacao, and many other medicines. So this is two messages at once. But one is Colombia has this beautiful ayahuasca tradition, which is now re-emerging because it's safe again, and because it was overlooked, it's also not like overtaking by sort of rampant tourism. You cannot buy ayahuasca at the market here. You do need a shaman. It's very traditional, very sort of controlled. And the other message is, I really hope that ayahuasca will not have the same destiny as coca had, or cacao, or tobacco, and that we will not try and separate it from its tradition, like separating the tree from its roots, synthesizing it in some weird form, and then trying to claim it's ayahuasca. I really hope that for those who are listening, if you ever work with ayahuasca, you do it in a traditional setting, whether you're going to come to LaWayra, like JM will do, I'm pretty sure this year, or you go somewhere else. Make sure they have an indigenous shaman. Make sure they grow and cook their own ayahuasca. Make sure they have a good team that understand what they're doing. Safe set and setting. Ayahuasca is extremely safe if you do it right. But if you have a real shaman, if you have real ayahuasca, if you follow all the preparation, it's extremely safe. I drink it. My wife drinks it. My entire family came here to drink it, and thousands of people that came through our doors. All are safe and sound, but it is a powerful tool. It has to be respected, and most importantly, follow the tradition. There are people like my shaman. His father is a shaman. His father's father was a shaman like this for many generations. They really know what they're doing. We don't need to reinvent the bicycle. We just have to go back to the tradition. Like in the past, every culture had their own psychedelic tradition. We as Europeans kind of lost ours, or they were uprooted by the Inquisition. We're so lucky not here. Not only they kept the recipe, but they also kept the entire tradition with all the ceremonies. And there's several ayahuasca traditions. So find yourself one and kind of join it. Don't do it in the basement of your apartment or with some shady guy from internet, because I think I'm more open to people like taking a little bit of mushrooms in a good group of friends. Don't do it with ayahuasca. Ayahuasca is not, you cannot, it's not a thing you kind of want to mess around with. So that's my message. If you're called to ayahuasca, do it right.
Yeah, I second that. I think it's beautiful, and brother, I'm just so glad you're sharing this, because you are transforming so many lives. Having your retreat center, getting out there, really getting this to the masses to say, look, this is not a drug; it is a medicine. I think it's incredible. So, Sam, if people wanted to come check out LaWayra, or they want to connect with you and just hear more about what y'all are doing, where's the best place for them to find you online?
So if you're kind of exploring it yet, you're not sure if you want to do ayahuasca yet or not, you're on a fence, go check out my podcast. It's very easy to find, ayahuascapodcast.com. There you can also find the episode with JM. We have a really great conversation. If you are ready to come work with ayahuasca, come to LaWayra. Our website is ayahuascaincolombia.com. Colombia with two O's, so Colombia, not like US state. We have, it's a great retreat. We have great reputation, great team, and we're very affordable. Like, we're about at least 4 times cheaper than any other retreat with similar facilities and reputation. And it's not because I don't want to charge more and I don't like money. It's because I really, really mean it when I say I want as many people as possible to have that experience. And JM, thank you for the conversation. I'm looking forward to hosting you here at LaWayra. I'm sure you will enjoy it, and maybe we'll do another episode with you at my podcast when you're here as a guest.
Can't wait, brother. I'm blessed to have met you, have you in my circle, and you're just such a genuine, authentic guy, brother. So I just appreciate you showing up, being here, and sharing the love, man. It's amazing.
Thank you, JM. Same to you. We're in the same ranks, fighting this similar battle.
Yeah. Hey, you guys, please go check out LaWayra. I'm telling you, I love his approach to it, because I will tell you, there are some that you're like, I don't know if I'll fit in. Sam has such a common sense approach to it. It's like, you don't have to change who you are to have this experience. You can be you and heal. This can truly change your life in a positive way. I hope many of you share this with people you know, love, and care about, because my experience was incredible. Meeting Sam has been incredible. I love the work that he's doing.
Just
Until
one,
next.
just one
Oh,
thing.
yep.
I want to give a freebie to your listeners. It's not there yet, but I'm working on it. It should be out in about a week. But go to ayahuascacourse.com and you'll get a free course, 3.5 hour course just on how to prepare for ayahuasca experience. And if you're coming from JM's podcast, when you're here, mention it and I'll give you a free massage. Not
Amazing.
myself, but my flute as well.
Brother, thank you so much. You guys, until next time, I appreciate you all. Take him up on his offer. He's amazing. We'll talk soon.